We have found this very interesting complex of tunnels 25 and 35 meters down. So it encouraged us to continue searching for Cleopatra. We have uncovered so many important structures.
They searched for decades. Then, in the ruins of a forgotten temple near Alexandria, they found something that shouldn't exist, a burial chamber that might belong to Cleopatra herself. For over 2,000 years, the final resting place of Egypt's last pharaoh has remained one of history's greatest mysteries. But recent discoveries at an ancient temple west of Alexandria have unveiled something truly chilling. A massive underwater tunnel, submerged chambers, and evidence that suggests Cleopatra's tomb might have been swallowed by the sea itself. This isn't just about finding a lost queen anymore. What archaeologists are uncovering raises disturbing questions about what really happened after her death, and why her tomb was never meant to be found. Let's dive into the mystery together and uncover what really lies inside Cleopatra's lost tomb. The woman who ruled an empire. Before we dive into the shocking discoveries, let's talk about who Cleopatra really was. Because this wasn't just some beautiful queen from ancient times. This was a woman who spoke 9 languages, outsmarted Rome's greatest generals, and nearly changed the course of Western civilization. Cleopatra VII was born in 69 BC into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek family that ruled Egypt for nearly 3 centuries. But unlike her ancestors, who barely bothered to learn Egyptian, Cleopatra immersed herself in the culture. She was the first Ptolemaic ruler in 300 years to actually speak the Egyptian language. That alone tells you something about her intelligence and political savvy. She didn't just inherit power. She seized it. At 18, she was exiled by her younger brother who wanted the throne for himself. Most people would have given up. But Cleopatra smuggled herself back into the palace, allegedly rolled up in a carpet, and presented herself to Julius Caesar. That meeting changed everything. She convinced the most powerful man in the world to help her reclaim her throne. That's not luck. That's pure strategic genius. The alliance that shook Rome. Caesar wasn't just charmed by Cleopatra. He was genuinely impressed by her mind. Here was a woman who understood economics, naval warfare, and diplomacy better than most of his own advisors. They formed an alliance that was both political and romantic, and soon Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Caesarion, who Caesar acknowledged as his own. Think about what this meant. Egypt's wealth could have financed Rome's expansion indefinitely. Cleopatra's son could have united 2 empires. But then Caesar was assassinated in 44 BC, and everything Cleopatra had built started crumbling. She returned to Egypt, but she knew her position was precarious. Rome was descending into civil war, and whoever emerged victorious would decide Egypt's fate. She needed another powerful ally, and fast. Enter Mark Antony. Mark Antony was one of Rome's greatest military commanders and part of the second triumvirate ruling Rome after Caesar's death. When he summoned Cleopatra to meet him in Tarsus, she didn't just show up. She arrived on a golden barge with purple sails, dressed as the goddess Venus, surrounded by attendants dressed as cupids. The Roman historian Plutarch described the scene as so spectacular that word spread through the city like wildfire. Antony was supposed to be interrogating her about her loyalty. Instead, he fell completely under her spell. Their relationship was different from her partnership with Caesar. This was passionate, reckless, and ultimately tragic. Together, they dreamed of creating an empire that would rival Rome itself. Antony divorced his Roman wife, married Cleopatra in an Egyptian ceremony, and began distributing Rome's eastern territories to her and their children. Rome was furious. They saw Cleopatra as a foreign seductress who had corrupted one of their greatest heroes. Octavian, Caesar's adopted son and Antony's rival, used this outrage to turn Rome against them both. The battle that changed everything. In 31 BC, everything came to a head at the Battle of Actium. Antony and Cleopatra's combined naval forces faced off against Octavian's fleet off the coast of Greece. It should have been a close fight. But something went terribly wrong. In the middle of the battle, Cleopatra's ships suddenly broke formation and fled. Antony, seeing her retreat, abandoned his own forces and followed her back to Egypt. His fleet, leaderless and confused, was decimated. It was a crushing defeat that sealed their fate. Historians still debate why Cleopatra retreated. Some say she panicked. Others believe it was a calculated decision to preserve her treasury ships. Whatever the reason, it was the beginning of the end. The final days. Octavian marched into Alexandria, and there was no escape left for Antony and Cleopatra. Ancient accounts say Antony became very ill and was brought to Cleopatra, who had locked herself in her mausoleum with her treasures. He passed away soon after, with Cleopatra by his side. Cleopatra now faced Octavian, the man who would soon become Rome's first emperor. She tried to bargain with him, as she had with other Roman leaders, but he remained focused on one goal, bringing her to Rome as a symbol of his victory. Cleopatra understood what that would mean. According to ancient writers, she did not want to be paraded as a captive. On August 1230 BCE, at the age of 39, she died in Alexandria. The well-known story tells of a serpent, though modern historians believe she may have used another method. The mystery begins. Here's where things get strange. Ancient sources claim that Octavian, despite everything, allowed Cleopatra to be buried beside Mark Antony in a tomb worthy of her status. The Roman historian Plutarch wrote that she was buried with royal splendor and magnificence. But where? That's the question that has haunted archaeologists for over 2 millennia. You'd think the tomb of Egypt's last pharaoh would be one of the most famous monuments in the ancient world. But it vanished without a trace. Ancient Alexandria, where she died, is now largely underwater or buried beneath modern buildings. Centuries of earthquakes, tsunamis, and rising sea levels have transformed the coastline completely. Whatever tombs or monuments existed in Cleopatra's time have been destroyed, buried, or submerged. For years, most experts assumed her tomb was somewhere in ancient Alexandria, lost forever beneath the modern city. But one determined archaeologist refused to accept that answer. The lawyer who became a tomb hunter. Dr. Kathleen Martinez wasn't supposed to be an archaeologist. She was a successful criminal defense attorney in the Dominican Republic, living a comfortable life far from the deserts of Egypt. But she had been obsessed with Cleopatra since childhood, and one day she had a realization that would change her life. Everyone was looking in the wrong place. Martinez studied ancient texts and came across references to Taposiris Magna, a temple complex about 30 miles west of Alexandria. The name means Great Tomb of Osiris, and it was built during the Ptolemaic period when Cleopatra ruled. More importantly, the temple was dedicated to Osiris and Isis, two deities intimately connected with death and resurrection. In ancient Egyptian belief, Isis used her magical powers to resurrect Osiris after he was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set. This myth was central to Egyptian views of the afterlife. And Cleopatra deliberately cultivated her image as the living embodiment of Isis. Martinez theorized that Cleopatra, knowing her death was imminent, might have chosen to be buried at Taposiris Magna to symbolically align herself with Isis and Osiris. It would have been the ultimate statement: even in death, she remained Egypt's divine queen. 20 years of digging. In 2005, Martinez convinced Egyptian authorities to let her excavate at Taposiris Magna. Many archaeologists thought she was wasting her time. The site had been explored before and yielded nothing spectacular. Why would Cleopatra be buried in a temple 30 miles from her capital when convention said she should be near her palace? But Martinez was relentless. For nearly 2 decades, she dug, explored, and refused to give up. And slowly, piece by piece, she began finding evidence that this place was far more important than anyone realized. First, she discovered coins bearing Cleopatra's image and name. Then came statues and artifacts from the Ptolemaic period. She found a massive cemetery containing over 2,000 mummies, all buried in a style that mixed Egyptian and Greek traditions, exactly what you'd expect from Cleopatra's multicultural era. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. The geometric miracle. In November 2022, Martinez and her team made a breakthrough that sent shockwaves through the archaeological world. Deep beneath the temple of Taposiris Magna, they discovered a tunnel. Not just any tunnel, but what Egyptian officials called a geometric miracle. The tunnel stretches for an astonishing 4,300 feet, or more than 1,300 meters. It's located 43 feet underground and is about 6 feet tall. The engineering required to build something like this in ancient times was extraordinary. The precision, the scale, the sheer ambition of it suggests this was no ordinary construction project. But here's what makes it truly disturbing. Parts of the tunnel are completely submerged in water. At first, archaeologists thought this was just groundwater seepage or damage from ancient earthquakes. But as they explored further, they realized something far more dramatic had happened. The tunnel doesn't just connect different parts of the temple complex. It extends all the way to the Mediterranean Sea.